wish you would talk to me.
I don't want to waste any time with this guy's investigation.
Shut up, Grady. My dad thinks I'm on drugs. My mom thinks I'm crazy. And you know, at this point, I don't know if I don't agree with her.
Help yourself, fucker! I'm grounded.
How come?
I think my grandmother down a flight of stairs. You are all my children now.
Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of the WayBack Movies Podcast, a show where we review the best and not so best of 80s and 90s cinema, because really, fuck the 2000s. My name is Steve, and with me on this crazy journey, Doctor. And we're back with yet another walk through Elm Street. The second part, if you will, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. A very different film from the first.
You don't say.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting romp. So, as I, of course, lost the keys to the WayBack machine, give me one moment. You'd think I'd have this planned out better, but I didn't, because I didn't think that far ahead, and I really should have.
Yeah.
So, but I found him. Okay, we're good. So there we go. We're going to, where the hell are we going? November 1st, 1985. Alright. Here we are, in 85.
You go, I'll just stay in the car.
Alright. I'm cool with that. I like this movie a lot, so, yeah. You can already tell where we're going to be fighting on this one. Although, if it helps you, I did spend a fair bit of time pointing out some of the really stupid shit in the movie.
No.
I've got notes on that, too, but we'll get to that in the future.
You mean frame one to frame last?
No, because first of all, some of the lines that I put in the intro here are amazing. Help yourself, fucker, you are all my children now. Those are fantastic lines by Mr. Robert Englund. So, with that being said, I will be spending the rest of this show defending this movie. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, November 1st, 1985. Directed by Jack Shoulder, written by David Chaskin, produced by Robert Shea, production company Huron Communications and Smart Egg Pictures, distributed by New Line Cinema. Box office of $30 million against a budget of $3 million. So made more than the first. However, it cost 3 times as much. But they still made a healthy profit.
Yeah, relatively speaking, it doesn't really matter.
No. Yet another small cast. Mark Patton as Jesse Walsh. Kim Myers as Lisa Weber. Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger / bus driver. Robert Russler as Ron Grady. Clu Gulager, as I found out that's how you pronounce it.
From our first episode.
Yep. He's back as Ken Walsh. Hope Lang as Cheryl Walsh. Christy Clark as Angela Walsh. Marshall Bell as Coach Schneider. And Sydney Walsh, ironically, as Carrie. So, the production of this film, as you can imagine, was a very quick turnaround, as it was released less than a year later. So
it shows.
A little bit, yeah. It was a little rushed. After the success of the first Nightmare, New Line quickly entered production on the sequel because it was the only property they had to make a sequel. They had nothing else successful. They had optioned so much of the rights of the first movie of the other production companies that the profits mostly went to them, so New Line actually made very little money. All they had was the rights to the character to make future movies so that they might be able to turn a profit in the future.
That's why they made $1 billion of them.
Yeah, so at this point, they were still broke. Not as bad as they were, but not really far off from it in the fact that making this movie was basically, if this movie didn't work, they were shuttering the doors. We were done here. So they hired an unknown writer named David Chaskin to write the sequel after he submitted a 15-page outline attempting to add humor to the film. kind of failed.
Keyword
Attempted.
is attempt.
Yeah. There's some humor, but it all came from one guy. It was all Grady all the time. 10 weeks later, after 3 drafts, he submitted a script that was accepted. Wes Craven was offered the job of director. He was interested, because he wanted the job, and he wanted to see the script, and he wanted to see where they were going. And then he immediately turned down the job. He didn't like where they were going at all. He didn't understand what they were doing. He was just like, well, this is, well, for lack of a better term, this is shit.
Wes Craven is a smart man.
Yeah, potentially.
So while we are delving into the mind of Wes Craven...
Oh, we'll get there.
It's just that we're just kind of be talking about his creation. And what they did to him.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll definitely get into Wes in the future and the rest of these episodes. He did, however, offer suggestions on things to do, which he claims were largely ignored.
Chose?
Bob claims he did take some of them, but...
Took them and threw them right in the trash.
That's entirely possible. Bob hired Jack Shoulder, who directed New Line's earlier film, Alone in the Dark. He was an editor for them. He was mostly just cutting trailers and things for them. So he was just like, well, you know how to direct things. You do this.
Good job, Bob.
Yeah.
Good job.
I mean, in all fairness, the movie is directed well. The script is fucking idiotic, but it looks all right. Although, and even weirdly enough, it was pointed out by, of all people, the Cinema Snob. The day for night effect that they use on the bus when it's driving into essentially what is hell looks really cool. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, that does look pretty sweet. Where are we here? Jack wasn't a fan of the original film, and felt no urge to follow the first one, which I even wrote down. Well, that speaks volumes.
Again, good job, Bob.
Yeah.
You hired a real gem.
Chaskin, Shoulder, and Shea decided to ignore the original film in favor of a new idea of Freddy possessing the living as opposed to just haunting dreams. And it occurred to me whilst watching this movie again, he doesn't haunt dreams, so he's just possessing at this point. Which I still am not quite sure I understand, but it's not the only time in this series that we just sort of take a hard fucking left and go into a weird direction.
Toss the rules right out the window.
It happens a lot. It is weird, though, that they toss the rules out the window for a sequel.
Yeah, like the direct,
the direct one following, they're like, oh yeah, we're not going to follow this. It's like, all right.
Like, I get 4 or 5, whatever, 6, sure, we're way down the rabbit hole at this point, but like, the direct sequel...
Yeah, you would think that they would follow it. I couldn't find anything to back this up, but I do, honestly, if I had, in my heart of hearts, from the moment I saw this movie till now, every time I've seen this movie, I always look at it and go, this was already a script written, right? Like, somebody already had this together and they inserted Freddy.
And they just crowbarred him in.
I've always thought that from the beginning, but there is nobody saying that that's ever happened.
And instead of Killer, they put Fred Krueger.
Yeah, exactly. Heather Langenkamp was never asked to come back. The producers never thought of adding her to the story. You can see how that goes. See us next month when we cover part 3 of how good, better an idea that was.
Just great decision after great decision, huh?
You know, they kind of, again, they just took a hard left with this movie. Just a hard fucking left. They jumped in the bus and fucking drove it.
Okay, what worked? Cool. Throw that in the trash.
Yeah, we'll just do this.
I'm gonna dust this old script off and just put Fred Krueger on it.
I think that's what they did. I honestly, still in my heart of hearts, believe that. So Robert Russler auditioned for the role of Ron Grady on the last day of shooting Weird Science. Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man himself, drove him to the audition.
What is with these, like, Hollywood connections?
It's the nightmare flicks.
Last week was Nick Cage convincing Johnny, and now this one, fucking Iron Man's dropping this guy off to audition for this.
Well, if you want to get in a weird place, and you know what, this is the best time to tell it I can even think of, because we're not doving into this man's life. Robert Englund, in 1976, auditioned for George Lucas for Star Wars. He auditioned for the role of Han Solo. Didn't get it. Went home, called up one of his really, really good friends in Hollywood, Mark Hamill, and said, hey, you should try out for this George Lucas guy. And he did. So
because of Fred Krueger,
yep,
we have Luke Skywalker.
And ironically, and if you want to talk about how good friends they are, when there's a certain time period in like the 90s and early 2000s that Mark Hamill was just like, oh God, stop bringing up Star Wars. Stop bringing up Star Wars. Do you know who got him through that and helped him accept it? Robert Englund. Because if there's anyone who's going to accept being typecast, it's Robert Englund.
Listen, you like money?
Yeah. You can milk this everywhere.
Come on, bitch.
You know. Yeah.
Just yelling at him as Freddy
I would
Krueger.
like to think that occasionally Robert Englund just drops the bitch everywhere, but
Yep.
I've heard he's way too nice for that.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
I'm too afraid to meet him, so I can't tell you. I've been in the room with him several times and been close enough to spit on the man. Not that I would, but I refuse to meet him. So, this is a weird one I didn't know. Michael J. Fox was originally considered for the role of Jesse, but was busy with Family Ties, Back to the Future, and Teen Wolf. You know, he had things to do.
You know, the 80s.
Basically. According to Jack Shoulder, Christian Slater and Brad Pitt both auditioned for the role of Jesse.
What is with this? Is this going to be every movie? Like, everyone in Hollywood wants a piece of these movies.
Yeah, actually it is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Most of it's not true, though.
Well, some of it is. I mean, the first one, no. None of that shit was true. However, as they started to become noticeable, it was starting to be true.
Fair enough.
In the next film, when we do cover it, there are two major film stars that are in that movie. One of them going under a very different name, which I will be referring to him as that, just so you know. Mark Patton had originally auditioned for Wes Craven in the original Nightmare. Doesn't say what part he was going for, but my guess would probably be Glenn, but Glenn was originally written as a jock, so I don't know. I don't know how that works, but you never know.
Hey, listen, if fucking all 2 pounds of Johnny Depp can be portrayed as a jock...
They changed their mind when Johnny Depp got signed on, because as Wes's daughter put it, he's beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mark Patton is beautiful. I'm sure his husband thinks so.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mark was the one who insisted to the casting director that he wanted Kim Myers to play the role of Lisa. Producers thought she was really talented, and she looked a hell of a lot like Meryl Streep, so she got the job.
She does.
She looks a hell of a lot like Meryl Streep.
Like
still does.
70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She still does.
True.
Like the current, she still looks a lot like her. It's like, yeah, you just sort of pull her hair back, because Meryl Streep's always got her hair pulled back like tight. You do that, she looks a spitting image. Mm-hmm. It's nuts. Sydney Walsh was set to leave Los Angeles after several failed attempts to start an acting career. This all changed after she got the role of Carrie, so good for her. Robert Englund was starting to feel ownership of the character since so much of Freddy came from him, so he and his agent, seeing what the potential franchise was going to do, decided to ask for more money, rightfully so. New Line claimed they didn't have the money and chose not to hire him, with Bob Shea saying, "We don't need Robert Englund, it's just a guy in a rubber mask." Not realizing Freddy is the franchise.
Bob, can I see you for a second?
Yeah.
Come here!
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Oh, don't worry. Somebody does do that, because as you know, Robert Englund's in this picture, so somebody did do that.
Just took him aside and paintbrushed him, going, now you get back out there and you find that man some money.
Mm-hmm. They filled the role with an extra in a mask. He was awful.
No.
There's one scene with him remaining in the movie, and I will point it out when we get there. And you can fucking tell. I'm shocked if you couldn't tell, but if you didn't, as soon as I say it, you'd be like, yeah, that is weird, because it's atrocious. But so immediately after that day of filming, because they filmed for about 2 weeks without him, and then they did like this one scene with him, and they're like, ooh, this is terrible. So Jack Shoulder went to Bob Shea and said, you have to hire Robert. This guy is awful, and then they agreed to pay Robert's salary. So somebody did slap Bob Shea and go, no.
Yeah.
So Bob Shea, don't worry, he doesn't, his dignity does
What's
not...
he fucking up this...
No, his dignity, this is him getting a little bit of payback. He was always dying to be an actor in the movies, and he really wanted to play Grady's dad. Jack Shoulder refused, to which Bob threatened to fire him. Even now, Bob calls him a jerk for that. Bob Shea's got a problem. So, he is in the movie. So Jack did let Bob play the leather-bound bartender in the S&M Club. That's Bob Shea. And to do it, he told him to go to a sex shop on Hollywood, which I believe